And welcome back to another edition of the 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling. I'm your host, Sean Meyers, joined by a returning Justin Lowery. Justin, good to see you again on this Thursday night. A lot of interesting things to talk about this week. We'll get into Raw, which I know you thought was a little bit better than recent weeks. SmackDown, I thought, delivered once again. It's a recurring theme. Not any real breaking news with All Elite Wrestling this week, but I first want to talk about some WWE-related news that could ultimately lead to some talent potentially jumping ship down the road, if you will. I think over the last probably 48 hours, there's been some fairly notable news in that it looks like a few WWE superstars might be trying to get out of their contract, not happy with their position in the company. The biggest names, the Revival, who have been getting a push recently, but still are nowhere close to what they should be presented as in terms of one of the best tag teams in the world.
Why wouldn't you want to get the hell out of there? I bet you there's a lot of people that would like to get the hell out of there, especially with a new promotion starting up. From what I read, though, it doesn't seem likely that Vince and company are going to release them because they don't want them going to All Elite Wrestling. Which, I mean, I hate Vince McMahon. I really do. I'm going to go on a little rant here because when I read this, it actually kind of, ticked me off a little bit.
Well, before you get started, I do want to draw a parallel. This pretty much is how it worked out with Neville, where he said, I'm done. I don't want to be here anymore. Now, I don't know if Neville was maybe a little bit worse of a fallout, because I believe he was actually backstage and then they had to take him off TV or whatever. The Revival still wrestled on Raw, and I wouldn't be surprised if they wrestle again this week if they're still around.
Well, apparently they requested the release after their match on Raw.
Okay.
So that's what I read, that backstage after the match, they went back there and said, Vince, whoever to whoever, we want out.
And what happened with Neville was they didn't release him. They kind of kept him around, paid him, I guess, a downside guarantee for a while, and then eventually, months later, I think finally did grant him that release.
Did they release him, or did his contract just run out?
I believe it was a release, but either way, he was sort of in purgatory for quite some time, and now, to your point, he's working in a sense for the competitor.
Right, and my thing is here, Vince. First off, tag team wrestling's a joke. If you're a legit tag team, don't go to the WWE, period. Just don't do it. If people ask for their release, clearly Vince doesn't see money in them. He doesn't think they're anything good. So why not grant them their release? If why be petty like this? People are going to ask for their release them. You're not going to use them anyway, and then you keep signing people. That tells you how, I just hate Vince McMahon. He's signing people not to use him. He just wants to sign people to keep them away from other promotions, whether it's All Elite Wrestling, Ring of Honor, New Japan. He doesn't care about the wrestling fans or the wrestling product. He wants a monopoly. He wants everything. How dare you compete against Vince McMahon? He's going to try to choke everybody out by giving everybody money. I also read that he is now telling people, if you get another contract offer from another company, show it to me, prove it to me what they're offering you, and I will double it. Just to keep you. Not even to use you, just to keep you away from somebody else, and that really pisses me off. And if you're a wrestling fan, that should piss you off.
Okay, so you're fired up.
Yes.
Well, let me present a couple angles here. I believe that with Vince. That being said, I think a lot of the signings, especially the guys who aren't major names, now obviously Vince is going to be handling something like a Kenny Omega signing. But when they bring in a guy like Walter, who we'll get to later, or some of these lesser known, at least in North America, guys, I don't know that he's even involved in that. It's probably Triple H or Mark Carrano or someone saying, this is a great talent, let's bring them in, let's use them in our NXT or our 205 Live. The problem is, once they get to the main roster, or once they're in that, I guess, on the fringe of being promoted, then it becomes a Vince issue.
Well, I think the NXT talent, a lot of that Vince probably doesn't have an eye on. I don't think Vince is scouting the indies for talent. I think that's Triple H and company. Vince, though, is looking like who he promotes to the main roster. And, we'll get to that a little later in the show. I can't wait, I want to rant on that too. But it's a joke. I mean, that's why I always wanted other promotions out there to give competition, because it gives guys opportunities. Without opportunity, Chris Jericho stuck in WCW Cruiserweight division. Chris Benoit, not to, bring him up, but he was a mid-card level act in WCW, heavyweight champion in WWE, Eddie Guerrero. Without that, these guys don't succeed. The Revival are very good wrestlers. We saw that in NXT. We saw
which was before Vince was heavily involved with them.
Hold up. Vince looks at them and goes, "They're small. I don't like them." You know, just like, what was it, this past on Monday on Raw, when Finn was in the ring with everybody. And the way Vince was like, "There's a lot of meat in here, kid. You know, there's a lot of meat." First off, I was laughing hysterically, and it came off so, you know, just weird. And Vince's love for the big guy. Like that, and there was truth out of that. And
well, that's what I think, that they played up the fact. Vince realizes people know what he likes in wrestlers, so they're using that in this sense.
I mean, but he was speaking truth.
Right.
I mean, he looks at guys, "I don't like the way you look, you're done." And it's ridiculous. They're great athletes. They can provide entertaining matches, and he talks about how he lets wrestlers grab the brass ring. It's up to them. No, you don't. No, you don't. You give some the opportunity, and a lot of others you don't give crap to.
The Revival is a team that I think would be very happy in WWE if they were on SmackDown or if they were in NXT. They just happen to be on Raw, which is, to your point, the worst possible place for tag teams. And this, you know, the winds of change or whatever, I think it was the return to wrestling against Lucha House Party, which, by the way, those guys are, you know, very talented workers in their own right. I don't think the Revival hates working with them in that sense. It's just, it's below what they should be. And I think Mike Kanellis and Maria, they've barely even been used. Now, they did get Second Life on 205 Live. I haven't seen how they've been using Kanellis on that show, but main roster-wise, Monday Night Raw-wise in particular, guys aren't going to be happy there. There's no doubt about that.
Right, and honestly, if you're a tag team, unless you're the Usos, the New Day, or the Bar, there's nothing for you. And honestly, the Revival, even if they went to SmackDown, I don't think anything would change that much. There's just, I don't see it. And they know, like, that tag match was booked to me as like a lower card match, or even a mid card. Lower card guys that there's really no storylines for. Here, we'll put you on TV because people might want to see you. We'll give you a little 10-minute segment and then, you know, off with you. We don't care.
So what do you think is going to be the resolution to this? Do you think that these guys, I mean, the Revival and whoever else, I mean, Dolph Ziggler could potentially be in a similar boat at some point? Rumor has it that, you know, maybe he won't be sticking around either.
I think they're stuck. I mean, they have a contract. I don't know how long it's for. And Vince is petty. And, you know, and what I heard, what they offered to Young Bucks, did you hear what they offered to Young Bucks WWE did?
I did not. The only number I heard for Omega was 5 years, $25 million. But I feel like these numbers are, you know, they're basically fake numbers because, one, you don't know if it's an accurate report. Two, what does that money include?
Right. Well, I think that would be his downside. I read for the Young Bucks it was like multi-year, like 3 years, 3.5 per. But there was a clause. Well, one, they could do their All Elite. They could keep that YouTube video on the network. And
being the Elite, right? And they could get out after like 6 months.
Right, and then which is like insane. Like they were willing to offer that just to stop a promotion from starting up. That's how like cutthroat they are. Which I guess for their sake, I guess that's good. But it hurts the wrestling fan. They want a monopoly, and everybody knows if somebody has a monopoly of something, it's not good. And I don't know if they're scared or they just don't want the competition. But that's mind-boggling to me. Anybody who wants out, they're stuck until a contract's up. Anybody, I really believe that.
We also mentioned Mike Kanellis, Maria, Dolph Ziggler. Probably going to be a lot more guys that we might hear over the next, couple months.
Yeah.
One thing, and that's obviously, not good news if you're a WWE fan, because people want to see the Revival do well. They want to see Dolph Ziggler continue to wrestle meaningful matches. You hope that, Vince and whoever's in charge starts using guys properly, but that's been the case for a long time. There's never an issue, Justin, using guys properly when it involves NXT and NXT UK, it seems. We highlighted very quickly the first ever pay-per-view for NXT UK. They're still called Takeover, right? That's just,
yes, it was UK Takeover, I think.
Right,
yeah.
Blackpool. So they have the Takeover. You said you got to see some of it. The reports, I didn't see any of it, but the reports were this was a terrific show on par with a typical NXT Takeover, even though the American fans might not be as familiar with the names. The matches delivered, and there were some surprises mixed in.
Yeah, I watched the first, I think it was like 2.5 hours. I probably saw an hour and a half, the first hour and a half. I missed the last two matches, the women's match and the main event. Those are the two matches that I did not see. I thought it was a typical takeover event, just with the European flavored crowd, with the chants and stuff. It was a little different because it was a European crowd. They're a little different than the American crowd.
Did you catch the "Are you watching Vince" chant?
Yes, and I saw his tweet that he was.
Which he wasn't, right? I mean, maybe he tuned in for a couple minutes.
Right, but I don't really think he's watching. He doesn't care about that over there. That's Triple H's baby.
Which he's got. I mean, he's gotten praise for what he's done with NXT and NXT UK.
I think Triple H gets it. I don't think Vince gets it, and there lies the problem right now with the company.
So you didn't see the main event, but there was kind of big news in that there was a debuting Walter, and this guy's world renowned for his ability. I think it's interesting because people are really excited about him and Pete Dunne. My question is, long term, do these guys ever come over to WWE?
Well, that's a good question, because there's guys over there in the UK that I would really like to see on my TV on a weekly basis. But again, who do you take off then? We talk about the riches they have. There's too many people and not enough spots. I think maybe one or two will make their way over at some point. I mean, but maybe on the NXT version. You've seen Pete Dunne on NXT. I don't think you're really going to see those guys on Raw and SmackDown. I mean, who do you take off? I mean, we're complaining about like a revival on Raw not being able to get a tough. Like, what are you going to do with those guys over at the UK? There's this. I would like to see Mustache Mountain come on the main roster and have great matches. I just don't see how that can happen.
So, in your estimation, NXT UK won't be the same as the North American NXT, which invariably people either get cut or they graduate. No one stays there forever.
I think a lot of that's going to be forever. Like, I know, for instance, Walter. He doesn't want to come over here. I mean,
right.
I've read tons of reports. He wants to stay over there with his family. He doesn't want to leave home.
Which makes sense.
But which I understand that. I mean, there's a lot of guys from New Japan that don't want to leave New Japan for that reason.
So, good show, in your estimation, at least from what you saw. Did you catch Finn Balor?
Oh, I did, yes. That was a nice surprise. Now, I did see on Twitter that he was there, but so was Charlotte. So I didn't really think like he was going to
wrestle. They were taking part in the, I guess, the unveiling of the Performance Center opening.
Right. So I just thought, and he's, from Ireland. So I just, it made sense for him to kind of be over there. So I didn't actually think, he would appear in a match.
The reaction to how Finn was used over there, and you can kind of speak to this better than I could, who didn't see it. Did it feel like more like the NXT version of Finn? Was there a tangible difference in how he's typically presented on Raw as opposed to over there?
Well, he was presented like a huge friggin' deal, and the crowd responded to him like he was a icon over there. More so, than he's presented on Raw, which maybe we can get to. We'll get to here in a second.
Well, yeah, it's a good transition because whether Vince was watching or not, it seemed like this was part of a plan to change things. You get the buzz on the internet from the hardcore wrestling fans. All of a sudden, 2.5 days later, he's in the main event of Monday Night Raw, and he wins that main event. And because Vince is, out there playing the heel authority figure that we all hate so much, he earlier in the show announces that Braun Strowman's out of the championship match at Royal Rumble. It'll be a fatal four-way to determine John Cena, Drew McIntyre, Baron Corbin, and Finn Balor. Finn Balor wins, which I think if you watched earlier tonight, you kind of anticipated.
That was telegraphed, yeah.
Seems like a good move. I don't know. Was it still injury-related solely for Braun?
Two reasons. I guess reason two actually would be he's still not cleared. But I guess the main reason is they realized, this was Vince's call. I guess he realized like maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago they said that they weren't going to give Braun the title, and they didn't want him to lose to Lesnar yet again. So they booked themselves into a corner. So they were like, we got to get him out of that match. And I guess him still being not clear just kind of worked out like, hey, let's, and they did the angle that they did.
That was a pretty lazy way to get him out, right?
Well, he can't wrestle. Well, how about the laziness of putting him in the match to begin? One, he put him in the match last month, and he's still not cleared in January. Like, this is how bad creative is. You're booking guys in matches that's not even cleared. Then you book him knowing he's not going to beat Lesnar to begin with. So then why did you put him in that situation? Apparently Finn was, supposed to face Lesnar last year, right?
And it became Strowman, Kane, and Lesnar.
I mean, Finn's not going to win, and apparently Lesnar actually wanted to wrestle Finn because he feels he gets his best matches out of guys like him, Daniel Bryan, AJ Styles. They kind of carry him to a different style of match.
And it's much easier storytelling. Lesnar beats the guy down, he rallies back, so on and so forth.
Like, no one wanted to see, Braun and Lesnar again. I know I didn't. At least with Finn, do I know the outcome? Yes. But at least I'll be entertained for maybe 10, 15 minutes in this match to see what Finn can do compared to what AJ and Bryan were able to pull out of him.
So Finn Balor is now in the match. That's a big step for him. Will it, last long term? Probably not, but it could be a step in the right direction. Nonetheless, that was notable from Raw. I thought there was a lot of things that happened that were sort of interesting on Raw. There was a title change for the IC Championship. They have Bobby Lashley winning in a triple threat against Rollins and Ambrose. Really enjoyed the match. That being said, Lashley's sort of in a weird place right now, isn't he? I mean, what is Bobby Lashley? He's this heel that he's really not getting over. Lio Rush is doing a lot of the work. He hasn't clicked since he's come to WWE almost a year ago. Maybe they're thinking a title run could change things for him?
I honestly, I think that's what it is. They know he's not working. Okay, he's not working. All right, let's give him a mouthpiece. Okay, they kind of got him over a little bit.
I enjoy Lio Rush because he cracks me up.
I enjoy it.
Hit him with the powers, Bobby!
Yeah, but I don't think it's translated completely over. I think it's helped a little bit. But they're like, okay, what else can we do? You know what? Let's give him the title. Plus, Dean, Seth doesn't need the title. Neither of them really need to have a title. Okay, let's see if this title reign could help, Lashley out. I mean, they're going to give it a shot, I guess. I mean, I don't know who's going to, feud for it. Doesn't Apollo still own a match? Doesn't he?
Yeah, they had the match, but because Apollo won that battle royal and then he lost later in the night to Ambrose.
Okay,
well, the forgotten guy in this is the guy who just beat Lashley in a feud, and that's Elias. Now, what would make more sense? Giving Lashley the IC title or giving someone like Elias who continues that upward trajectory?
Well, but see, Lashley's one of Vince's pet projects. He's always has been since the Donald Trump WrestleMania. Remember that? That it's one of Vince's boys. He has the look Vince loves. Who cares if he doesn't have charisma? Look at those pecs, baby. There's some meat in that ring.
Well, and this goes back to, I don't want to go too much on a tangent here because we're sort of short on time with all the stuff we want to get to, but isn't it like you could have guys who don't really talk if they're good at other things, if they have a great look, or if they're a great in-ring worker? Not everyone has to be a total package, and I feel like guys who don't have it all end up dropping down. Why not with Lashley or Asuka or some of these people that don't have great verbal abilities, Nakamura? I think some of these people have been ruined because they've been forced into having to talk, and it's exposing them.
A good writer, a good producer, or whatever, will put each wrestler in the best, chance to succeed.
Not the entire roster is going to be great all around, right?
Right. Everybody's going to have shortcomings. Paul Heyman was brilliant at it in ECW. He took everyone's positives, threw them out there, hid the negatives. Okay, Lashley can't talk. Okay, we give him the mouthpiece. Brock Lesnar can't talk. You hide it. Show what he can do. Lashley's actually very physically gifted in the ring. He can pull stuff off for guys his size shouldn't be able to pull off.
He did some really good stuff in that match.
Right, showcase it. He's a power guy. Showcase that. Accentuate the positives, hide the negatives. But they're clear. It's dumbfounding how they're like, hey, you can't talk. Go out there and try to be funny. And it just doesn't work. Like Asuka, why give her a mic? She just screams. It's horrible. Do not do that.
Which she did again on SmackDown. And she gets, almost every time she's on TV, she's getting a promo.
Right. She should never, ever cut a promo.
I would say, realistically, maybe 5 times a year have her say something. Because 1, it means more. 2, you don't put her in those bad situations nearly as often.
If she has to say something, keep it short.
Right.
Very short. She's practiced it backstage.
Or something taped. Do NXT does great with their sit-down interviews or their packages that they put together, giving backgrounds on people. Anyway, so Lashley is now a champion. We'll see where it goes from there. It seems like, to your point, Rollins and Ambrose can continue their little thing if they want they don't have to, but IC title's not part of that picture now. Another championship that I think, I hate to say everything's going to be interesting, but this is a really curious way as to how this one might unfold. Ronda Rousey and Sasha Banks, and they're really doing this kind of quick last-second type of putting this feud together. Do you get the feel that even 2 weeks ago that they didn't necessarily know that it was going to turn out like this?
No, not at all. Apparently, they were still kind of leaning towards Charlotte and Ronda, and then Vince decided and then they picked Sasha. I think it was just who can we get?
But is this gonna hurt Sasha long term? I mean, she's getting a push, but I feel like it's almost too much too quickly.
Well, it's out of nowhere. I mean, they were positioning her and Bayley as a tag team, and you think with the women's titles coming, okay, that they're going to focus on that. Then all of a sudden, it was like, let's pull Sasha from that. Bayley can go team with Natalya, and I mean, none of it really makes sense. I'm thankful though that it's not another Nia Jax, match. So at least we got that to be thankful for.
So they have Sasha and Ronda team up, and Sasha does almost all the work, and she just looks more motivated now. You've seen that sometimes when people get that opportunity, they, bring out a little bit more.
Sure.
And then she cuts a promo that wasn't completely heel, but it was more like the Sasha Banks that I think you and I both prefer.
Okay, I got a problem with that. Oh, well, not really what Sasha did, what Ronda did. She's supposed to be the baddest woman on the planet. She acted like a wimp. No, I don't want to offend you.
Right.
Oh, she's chasing Sasha up the ramp. Kick her ass. Be tough. Like, what the hell is that?
Well, Sasha comes across looking like she's ready to fight.
Right, and Ronda's looking like, I want to be friends. I'm sorry, I didn't want to hurt your feelings. What is that? She's supposed to be a badass, not a weakling. Oh my God, what was that?
And that's the type of thing that's going to have fans cheering for Becky Lynch when she goes against Ronda Rousey. And they don't understand, well, we want Ronda to be the face. Why aren't the fans supporting her? It's little things like that over the course of a year, right?
Right, yeah. Mind-boggling.
The other thing on Raw, and we'll stick with the women for a little bit, it was both Raw and then SmackDown, and it really sort of stuck out as being a change from what we've seen over the last 5 or so years. First on Raw, completely out of the blue, they have Alexa Bliss like borderline topless backstage, but I'm okay, with if it makes sense, it ties into something. This was so random and made no sense. It was like a guy just walking back there. They just wanted to get that on camera, and I guess the rumor is, maybe it's not even a rumor, it's a fact, that it's blowing up on YouTube right now. But don't you kind of need a purpose to do something like that?
Well, what I was, able to look into and read, apparently it was done on purpose with Mandy, in the hotel room on SmackDown, and then a towel. What does it
that made sense because that was part of this ongoing storyline.
Right, but what is it starting to remind you of? The Attitude Era. Skits and little backstage segments like that was part of the Attitude Era. And I guess they're trying to be, Vince wanted a little bit more, edgy, a sex appeal to it.
And I told you before, I would love if they made the last hour of Raw from 10 on, TV 14.
What is that in response to? Other promotions starting up, fans looking for something different. So there's Vince's response. All right, they want something a little bit more edgier. Okay, we're too dull. You know what? We'll just have someone walk in on Alexa Bliss, topless. Which, I mean, yeah, I'm sure most guys are like, oh, yeah, And I don't know what hour that was done in.
It was after 10, for sure.
So it was in the later hour, so you could get away with a little bit more there. Most of the young kids are probably in bed sleeping. I thought it was just awkward, because there was no reason for it.
Right, exactly.
I'm going to complain about it.
It would be one thing if they were doing like a love storyline with some guy they tried to tease it later with Otis Dozovich coming out. But just to have a random, stagehand do that,
It was random, and it just came off as awkward, and I don't think it did what they wanted it to do.
So I mentioned Otis Dozovich. The NXT call-ups, if you will, Nikki Cross got a match on Raw, and good for her. She had a good showing. We've already seen her wrestle on the main roster on SmackDown. The thing that I absolutely hate, and I'm going to guess you're on the same page, they're now saying that they're not going to assign these new talents to shows yet. They're going to kind of experiment with them, which I think is real life them saying we don't know what to do with them at this point. We'll try to figure it out. But they're all in stupid roles except for Nikki Cross. I mean, Dozer looks like a buffoon, which, like, whatever. But he looks like a clown, and Tucker Knight's the one trying to reel him back in. Lacey Evans is awkwardly sipping tea or whatever while she watches. And then EC3, who probably will be a big star, or at least should be a big star, kind of just looks like a narcissist that just stares at himself. How does that get people interested?
Well, I read, because I've been dumbfounded by this. One, Heavy Machinery, they're done already. They've already come off as a comedy tag team. So if they're ever going to be taken seriously, it's done. I think you've made them look like a joke. If you're a kid or somebody who doesn't know them, you're like, oh, okay. And they're going to be a comedy tag team. I know where that's going.
Truthfully, no offense to them, but they're not a high-level team in most regards.
I didn't understand why they were getting called up to begin with. But, that's a different subject. But apparently, and it's true, they don't have any idea what to do with any of these guys. And Vince just said it was his call. He just wants their faces on TV and thinks that's good enough. You don't need to put them in storylines or matches. Just put them on TV so people see their faces.
Now, that worked with Elias, but I think it was different. Elias was the only guy doing it, and it was sort of unique. He was walking through the crowd, so on and so forth.
Still, though, there was still a story behind it, a character development behind it.
Right.
This isn't really, this is just like...
Here's 15 seconds of this person.
There's this guy you're supposed to care about looking himself in the mirror. Yeah, him. Yeah, look at him. It makes no sense.
Also, I talked about Alexa Bliss. After she got her clothes on, she came out and she announced before an interview with Paul Heyman that the women's titles would be coming next month. Little strange decision. I guess there's a reason for it. I probably would have rather seen him come at WrestleMania, though.
Well, if you waited this long, we've been hearing about it for what, like a year and a half? Wouldn't you have the crowning at WrestleMania? That's what I would think, but I guess not. No.
SmackDown, two things stood out to me. One was just an unbelievable match. One of the best TV matches I'm sure we'll see this year. Andrade Cien Almas, now just known as Andrade. Whatever. It's not a big deal, but I think that they assume fans are all stupid and can't remember even basic names. So he, now just known as Andrade, goes against Mysterio. We saw shades of it last week in a tag team match. These guys, man, they got probably, 20-some minutes or so? I think it was
an awesome match.
Three segments, just incredible stuff, and it seems like the perfect match to get Andrade over. That being said, I still would have liked to have seen stuff like this on pay-per-view where more eyes are on it.
Are more eyes on the pay-per-view? Or that's a question. I don't know.
Yeah, you have a point there, but you understand where it has more importance, I should say, maybe.
Right, but maybe if the casual fan is just, flipping through or watching, who don't have the network, this is a chance like, oh, man, this is awesome. I thought the match was great. The right person won, which I was happy. I was worried about Ray getting back his win. I was like, oh, no. But that's the reason Ray should be there. The match was awesome. I enjoyed every second of it. And I thought it made, I think it makes a young guy look like a star.
I read something that if you're thinking about the Royal Rumble contestants, Rollins and McIntyre on Raw, although I would say McIntyre really only makes sense, I thought, if Braun Strowman won the championship. Now that he's not in there, we're not getting Finn against McIntyre for the Universal title at WrestleMania. It's just not going to happen. I don't think McIntyre's really a contender at this point. Seth Rollins seems to be. Who in the heck from SmackDown is a legitimate contender? Someone said the only realistic shot they thought was Andrade Cien Almas. I don't see that at all, but who do you see on that side?
No, honestly, I think Rollins is going to win the Rumble, and that's it. That's my pick. I think he's the only pick, really. That's how bad it is. No one. I mean, AJ Styles isn't going to win the Rumble. Rusev.
Well, AJ's not because he's wrestling against Daniel Bryan. This goes back to what you and I saw in Pittsburgh, Justin.
See, to me, just because you're in a match doesn't mean you shouldn't be in the Rumble. And they just started doing that the last couple of years. Before, you would see someone wrestle in a match and still be in the Rumble.
Well, technically, there's nothing saying he can't, but I went with the impression Bryan, Mustafa Ali for the title at Royal Rumble, put Styles in the Rumble, and then you have two really legitimate contenders. Now Mustafa Ali's doing something with Joe. And by the way, did you see his selling on SmackDown? In what is now a generation where you don't get selling very much, this guy's doing everything he can to make sure that he sticks around, and it seems like him and Joe could be a pretty fun storyline coming up.
Oh yeah, I mean, I understand Joe the Powerhouse, kicking around the new guy, the new kid on the block. Yeah, I mean, I think it could work for sure.
With the Royal Rumble, are we gonna see sort of feuds kind of become mini feuds that don't ultimately culminate in matches?
We see that this time of year. They do stuff just to get through a couple weeks, and then you'll have more mini feuds because Elimination Chamber is coming up in February. So you'll have the 5-on, that match where a bunch of guys get lumped in, and then once that's over, then you finally see the break apart and where they're going to go really with the card for WrestleMania.
Final thing here. I know you thought in general Raw was better, at least from what you watched. You had to kind of check out. SmackDown seemed like another good show. How do you kind of evaluate both the combination of the programming we saw combined with some of the news that came out this week for what it means for WWE going forward?
I thought the Raw was probably the best Raw in months, to be honest, at least for me, my enjoyment level. We'll see if it continues. Was it just a one good week that, kind of worked? Or is it going to become a steady thing where they're improving? I mean, we are getting in, the Rumble's coming up. We are in WrestleMania season, I guess you could say. And this is usually where they pick up steam a little bit. We'll see what they can do with it.
All right, that is going to do it for another edition of the 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling. Check us out on Twitter, 5-Star Pod Wrestle. We'll have tweets each and every week during programming, plus for the Royal Rumble, which is coming up. By the way, if you listen to Shane McMahon, it's not this Sunday. He got a little confused. You would think the son of the owner would know when a pay-per-view that he's competing at would be. It's next Sunday, so we got about 10 days before the Rumble. We'll come back next week with our predictions as well. But for this week, that's going to do it. For Justin Lowery, Sean Meyers signing off. Remember to check out our YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe, check out the old videos. We'll be back again with another edition of the 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling.